Good morning. I am Steve Weber, the host and co-creator of the American Gumption morning show, broadcasting here on Spirituality Gone Wild. And here it is, a brand new week. It's actually, yesterday was the brand new week, but I took the day off yesterday. And so my first day of the week here, I didn't actually take the day off, but I didn't broadcast. So anyway, Tuesday, February 23rd, welcome to the show, show number 131. And thank you to Spirituality Gone Wild, my broadcast partner ever since the beginning of the American Gumption morning show. And we just keep rolling along. More things coming in the near future, announcements to be made, things to be rolled out, exciting things happening behind the scenes. So stay patient with that. All righty. So today, our guest is going to be Katy Huff Mortensen. She is the author of Unmasked, and it's really the story of courage and vulnerability. And so that's coming up in just about 15 minutes. We'll hear from Brandon Schaefer after the monologue. He will do his Tuesday simple motivation, simple business help. Brandon Schaefer joining us at about 13 or so past the hour. And that's it. That's what's happening today. And so let me tell you about what's happening tomorrow and Thursday and the rest of the week. So tomorrow, Victoria Reynolds, she returns. She was here at the very end of the last year, the week between Christmas and New Year's. And so she'll be joining us tomorrow. And we're going to be talking about some of the differences between spirituality and the religions. And she is the author of Transcending Fear and Free Your Spirit. All righty. So that's Wednesday. Now tomorrow, Thursday, Brandon Heschbacher, he returns to the American Gumption morning show. He was here on show number 38 back on September 25th. And when he checked in with us, he was in, I believe, Kansas, and he was riding his bicycle across the country. So he finished his adventure. He went from the East Coast to the West Coast, across the mountains, ended up in, I don't know, Los Angeles or San Diego, somewhere there. And that was around Thanksgiving. He's been back. But anyway, I finally got him to come back and tell us the story. So that'll happen on Thursday. And Andrew is my first cousin's son. So my first cousin once removed. So he'll be joining us on Thursday. Andrew Heschbacher, right across America. All righty. And Friday, we're still working on a guest. I don't have someone to announce yet, but we'll do a show one way or the other. All righty. So that's that. All right. Now, let's get into the monologue because we have a busy show here. All righty. So the name of my monologue, let's go ahead and throw this up here. We'll change that. And then here we go. Impersonator. Yes, impersonator is the name of the monologue today. Alrighty. So for 15 years, I had the opportunity to professionally hide behind the mask of a fictitious, beloved character. Let me repeat that. For 15 years, I got to professionally hide behind the mask of a fictitious, beloved character, and it was wonderful. When I first started, the people at Bubba Gump told me, "Don't ever come out of character. Stay in character." And initially, that wasn't easy for me because I had a little bit of ego. I had my own identity, Steve, and people say, "Well, who are you really? What are you really doing here? What's your real name?" And at the beginning, I didn't know better, and I would tell people. And then, anyway, the people at Bubba Gump, they coached me, and they said, "Hey, when you put the costume on, you're Forrest Gump. You don't ever talk about Steve. That's not your identity any longer. You're the character." And so what I had to do is, I had to do what actors do. I had to learn to take on that role and become the character. That's what a lot of time actors will talk about how they get into the head of the character. Well, that's what I ended up doing, is getting into the head of Forrest Gump. And now, different than what Hollywood actors do is they play the role for, a couple months, maybe, that maybe it's like a year out of their life. They do some pre-planning, they get into it, and then they actually start filming, and they do it, and then they have the post-production, and then they do the circuit where they go out and they talk about the movie. So for maybe a year or two, of their life, they're that character, and then they're moving on and there's some other character and they keep doing it. Well, for 15 years, I was the character. I ended up wearing the mask of Forrest Gump. Now, I didn't have to wear a mask. I just had to show my face out in public, but, there was no mask, but in a way I was wearing a mask. I was certainly wearing a costume. I wore the costume. There's me in the, there's getting mixed up here on the, there is the actor, Tom Hanks, and there is me in my costume on the Wheaties box. Alrighty. So in time, I took on the role. I embraced it, and it took a few months, maybe that first part of the, first half a year, I was learning how to do it, but then I embraced it. I got into it and it was fun. It was easy. It was entertaining. People loved it. And I loved doing it. Now fast forward 15 years, as that role of me doing that is winding down and I'm learning to become Steve again, that was actually a little bit more challenging for me. And the challenge was compounded in several different ways. And the biggest way is that I was never really fully sure of who Steve was, prior to taking on that role. So, I was 37 when I got the role as far as Gump. And, I had, you go through your 20s and you go into your 30s and you're learning your identity. You're figuring out who you are as a person. But, I ended up, I had ideas. I wasn't like I was completely lost and wandering aimlessly in the woods. But, it's like, well, what's your purpose? What's your identity? Who are you really? Anyway, I take on this character role and it kind of stunted my growth as Steve, I think, because I became kind of frozen in time. I just had to be the character and I got to hide behind Steve got to hide behind the character for, a good 10, 15 year period after that. Towards the end, I was starting to come out of it a little bit, transitioning to the next phase of my life. But, I was just like that character and that was the role. And I remember people would say, do you have any trouble distinguishing between Steve and Forrest? And I was like, oh, no, that's, I would always completely discount that question and say, no, there's no problem. And in many ways, there wasn't any problem because, when I was on the weekends, Friday, Saturday, Sunday, I was working and I was the character. And when I was during the week, I was not the character. And yet it was still kind of a big part of the character because I was always preparing, performing. Going to be the character was always lurking. It was either it was either the first day off or it was the second day before I went back to work, kind of thing. So I was always, that role. And so anyway, it was, like I said, I got to hide behind the mask of the character to a certain degree. So at roughly age 50, I decided it was time to figure out who Steve was and get on with my life. And I've spoken about this a lot of times here on the show. I've talked about the different pieces. 2009, initially, I was talking about it as being my year of transformation. But now, just recently, I decided that 2009 was not my year of transformation. 2009 was my year of awakening. And 2009 was also my first year of transformation because every year has been a year of transformation, since that time. So now 2009 is called the first year of transformation. And really it's the year of awakening. And it's been a 10-year process then. And again, I've spoken about it, so I'm not going to go into those details today. But an overview is that during that time of that initial awakening period, I really went back and looked at all my core beliefs and had to decide what did I believe and what core beliefs were worth keeping and which ones were not worth keeping and moving on to new beliefs. So that process still continues to today and it's ongoing and continuous. And it's fun. It's fun. So, when I was performing, people would a lot of times say, man, I wish I looked like someone. And then they said, oh, it must be a lot of fun to do what you do. And both of those were true. It was a lot of fun. And it was pretty cool that I looked like this fictitious beloved character. That was fun. That was easy. And, it was, it was gratifying in many ways, but it was also like, it was like confusing in the sense that, like, you know, like in my mind, I'm always like, well, I'm not really the character. Well, who am I really? And so for like a good 10-year period, I just didn't even worry about it. I just, you know, rolled with the tide, or rolled with the wave that I was riding. So when it finally came time to take off the mask and, you know, for me to become Steve, roughly 2009, 2010, you know, it was a bit challenging, because that was like, I had to decide, well, what do I really believe? Who do I want to be? And how do I go forward with this thing? And I had to learn to, you know, be courageous and vulnerable in a different way. I was courageous and vulnerable performing as the character. And that was, you know, there was certainly a lot of courage and a lot of vulnerability in being the character, but in learning to be myself, you know, that took like kind of a next level. So, so learning to be authentic as opposed to what others think about you, being genuine as opposed to what the ego tells you should be, you know, that ego thing, learning to have the courage to just be myself, and learning to live free. All things that, you know, that Katy is going to talk about in her book. I wanted to just throw my little spin on it before we got into that conversation with her, because, you know, just because, you know, I thought, hey, because it's my show and I can do whatever I want. So anyway, that is the monologue today. That's the impersonator monologue, and I'll be anxious to speak with Katy in just about 2-3 minutes from now, after we get the Brandon Schaefer, and you know, but we'll hear her take on how she had to take the mask off that she wore all her life. Obviously, a different type of mask, that sort of thing. All righty, so that's that. All right, well, Brandon has warmed up in the green room. He has arrived. Let's go ahead and play his welcoming song and get him right out here and get this show on the road. Brandon Schaefer is in the house. Welcome, Brandon. How are you doing there?
Steve, I'm doing great, man. I'm throwing punches, man. I'm like, I'm back in the green room. I'm throwing punches like this. I'm like, oh, I'm tuned up. I'm ready to go, Steve.
Good. Well, welcome back. We missed you last week, but we're glad you're here. What are you thinking about today? What do you got on your mind there, my friend?
Oh, man, just going through a couple personal things here, and it's what's going to make the biggest impact? Do that first. What is going to make the biggest impact in your day today? And put a priority to that. I know in my life sometimes, you know, I have all these huge priorities. I have all these things I want to accomplish, and I let these little things get in the way. And then I find out that I'm losing time and losing more time. And my goal for today, and my goal for everybody that's listening to this, is do what's going to make the biggest impact first. Do not delay it any further. So that's all I have for you today, Steve. I know it's powerful. I don't think I can drill it home much more than that, but you know, get your hands together. I never like to do fists. I always like to do wide open, but just wide open those hands up and get those activities done, man. So
yeah, I like that message. And I, in my own life, I've got like all these big plans, and then I've got all these detailed things. And how do you balance those on a day in and day out basis? So you just jump in and you take care of them one after another.
Bang them down, man. Bang them down. It's like bowling pins.
All right, my friend. Well, thank you so much for joining us. We'll see you next week.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to the show. I'm going to hang around, Steve. I'll join on YouTube. Thanks. Bye.
Brandon Schaefer, our friend, his website, Simple Business Help. Brandon and his team, if you have technology, if you have things that aren't talking to each other, like a CRM with an accounting system, with some kind of a calendar system, Brandon and his team help you connect the electronic dots so that your business can run more efficiently. So if you have any technology challenges, reach out to Brandon at Simple Business Help and let him help you. And we appreciate that he's been a part of this show almost from the very beginning, shows up on Tuesday and just gives us a 1-minute little update on what is happening. All righty. Well, let's go ahead and welcome our guest. She is in the green room waiting up. I hope that they've been treating Katy nicely in the back. The little American Gumption elves have been kind to her. Katy, there you are. Welcome.
Well, good morning, Mr. Steve. What a pleasure to be with you and a blessing. Thank you.
Oh, you're very welcome. We talked, a couple weeks ago, and we wanted to make sure we found a time when it was convenient for you. And so anyway, here you are today. I had a chance to read Unmasked. Let me before we talk too much about it, let me just share my screen and show people what the cover of the book looks like. Let's see, there it is, Unmasked. It just came out, and we're going to get into it, and we're going to talk about it. And look at that beautiful mask. It's a beautiful kind of a New Orleans look type of a mask. Or anyway, it's fun, and you could tell us all about the cover and what's more importantly what's inside the book. Now, Katy, I'm going to give you plenty of chance to talk, but there's two things that happen prior to us letting you have a free reign and tell us all about it. I'd like to read a little bio and intro so people know who you are. And then I have a song that I play, and it's called the First Time Guest theme song. And so it's like one of those things that, like, when you write your next book and we bring you back, we won't be able to play it because you already heard it once. So it's a one and only thing. Is that all right?
That sounds great.
All righty, good. Well, let me tell people who you are, and then we'll play the song, and then we'll get into Unmasked. So Katy Huff Mortensen is the author of Unmasked, The Power of Courage and Vulnerability to Live Free, No More Shame, Settling, or Self-Betrayal. That's a long subtitle you have there, but very good. So Katy spent a good portion of her life hiding behind a mask due to shame and humiliation. She was mortified and embarrassed. Then reality would set in that once again she had settled and betrayed herself. And then next came feelings of unworthiness, unbecoming, shame, and being unforgivable. We were never meant to wear a mask. We were created to live life with courage and vulnerability, living with peace and freedom. Katy's book, Unmasked, is both her own story and a blueprint for you to live courageously and vulnerably. In Katy's day job, she represents Legal Shield. She is both a BSN and RN, and BSN, I assume, is Bachelor of Science Nursing?
Correct.
Oh, right. So yes. And so Katy comes to us with an extensive medical background and empathies. She is a daughter, wife, sister, aunt, friend, and small town girl. I like that, small town girl. So Katy Huff Mortensen, welcome to the American Gumption Morning Show. Thank you for joining us.
Oh, like I said, thank you, Steve. This is really an honor to be a part of your amazing podcast and to talk to someone who has played Forrest Gump so well with, like you said in your beginning, with the mask. And, all of us are running around with some kind of a mask at some time because, it's safe that way. So we think.
Yeah. And the funny part about it was my mask was just my face, but it was still, it was still like I was pretending. So we all do it. Hey, let's play that the First Time Guest theme song, and then we're going to get into the book. All righty. All righty. Katy, have you ever had a marching band welcome you to a broadcast before?
No, what a privilege and what an honor. That's awesome. I felt like I should get up and do my marching like I used to in high school with the drill team.
That's right. You are a small town girl, so there was a marching band, and that's what we did back in high school.
That's right. That's right. What a great memory. Thank you.
Well, good. Well, welcome. Let's just jump right into your book. But maybe before we talk specifically about the book, what was the moment, and was there a moment that you kind of woke up and you went, okay, enough is enough. The mask has to come off. I mean, you must have had inklings of it, throughout your life, and yet somehow or another, it repeated itself and repeated itself. So what finally broke this, the straw that broke the camel's back and made you write the book?
Well, that was definitely an aha moment. I would say, I think as we all go through life, we have identity crises along all the way. As a teenager, as a young adult, as when you get first married. And I was married once before, and that was like 30 years ago, and I was married for 7 years, and then I was on my own, obviously dating, but not married. And I met someone, and you and I kind of talked about this. What the aha moment is when I'm a Christian woman born and raised in Butte, Montana, live in Lolo, and I met a guy that on the very first date, he had told me that he was a Scientologist, which is really diabolically opposed if you think about it. So I was kind of taken aback just because we were so different. But at the same time, Steve, he had everything that I thought I wanted and desired in a mate, in a partner. And, like all of us in dating, we have our little checking of the box, if you will. He was successful, he was handsome, he liked the same things I did, from skiing to, golfing. Everything seemed like it was nirvana. And, I was in a coaching program once, and our relationship did not work out. And it was that moment where I was embarrassed because I was, pretty braggadocious, if you can say that, about who he was and what a great man is. And he is a great guy, but he just wasn't the great guy for me. Mm-hmm. And so our relationship, kind of imploded. And I started reflecting on my life and what happened and why. But I was also, like your introduction said, I was embarrassed and ashamed because I had blown this relationship up to be everything and more. So then I was hiding, in the sense that it was like, oh my gosh, how can I be real when I've been telling everyone that this is great? And I had this moment where I was in a coaching session with one of my coaches, and I was talking about the betrayal. And it doesn't have to be a relationship to be betrayed. It could be a boss. It could be a family member. It could be, a lot of different things. But with this particular coach, I told him that I had been betrayed. And he was so delicately and forthright by saying to me, Steve, well, Katy, he said, yes, I know that you feel he betrayed you. However, he said, you betrayed yourself. You are a Christian woman. And on your very first date, he said he was a Scientologist. So you betrayed yourself. And I'll tell you what, Steve, it was like, oh my gosh, the 2x4. And for 3 years, I was walking around thinking that, everything was going to be back to the way it was. So that aha moment was when I realized that I made a decision knowing that there were obstacles that were bigger than most obstacles are, for me anyway. But I stuck and stayed because, I had pride probably. And I was, didn't want anyone to know how broken I was inside. So I put a mask on. And for 3 years, Steve, I was walking around saying everything's great, everything's wonderful. He's in Wyoming, I'm here, and then it hit me that it was just like, that can only go on for so long. And So
Why
that,
are we?
that was the aha moment. It was just like, oh my gosh, when this coach pointed out and shined the light in the mirror and said, it's time for you to, look at what my responsibility was in all of that stuff. And I was like, okay, you're right.
Yeah, I've had these moments in my life where the mirror is held up, and it's like it's not the most like the reflection that we see isn't always the most flattering, and yet it's like what offers us the biggest opportunity for growth. And it sounds like the coach was both gentle and yet effective in helping you to see what needed to be seen, because otherwise we'd still be stuck.
Absolutely. And that's the thing is none of us are going to go through this life without trials, without failures. And it's okay, because that's what takes us to the next level. I always say the mess is our message and the test is our testimony. And all of us have been tested. All of us have gone through messes. One of my chapters is broken to blessed. And so I was broken because I was hiding, thinking that I could put on this facade that everything was wonderful and great, when inside I was broken. I was walking in fear versus having faith that there's something bigger and better from every challenge that we go through. And there's something that to be gained from that and something to get onto the other side of it. And so I was praying and meditating one day, and I was like, I just heard that I needed to write a book, because there's so many people that are wearing a mask, that have made decisions that they settled, or have shame from things that they've said or done or didn't do, and obviously have betrayed themselves by those decisions. But that doesn't mean you have to stay there. And that's the beauty of that, is that there's a way to get on the other side. And that's why you move forward.
Once you decided to write the book, did it come out fast? Did you just sort of sit down and did it all just sort of flow right out? I mean, without, I don't want to make this a book writing exercise, but I am curious. I mean, how did the process work for you?
Well, again, another chapter is timing is everything, right? Mm-hmm. And so it was a timing thing. So I started in probably December a couple of years ago, and I went gung ho, and I wrote for 90 days, and it was really fast. But then, it's like a pause. I needed to pause. I took a pause for about another 3 to 6 months. So the total time of writing and editing it and getting it to the editor and all of the steps that it takes, Steve, which is quite intense and a huge accomplishment when you get your book in your hand. It took me probably about 1.5 years is a total time from blank page to conclusion, and then having it printed and then published. And I always say through the grace of God, I was able to be recognized as a #1 bestseller in 4 different categories, which was truly a blessing. And I'm just grateful.
Yeah, well, that's a great thing, and you should feel lots of pride in that. And the fact that you just carried through and did it. I've written the same book 3 different times, and it still isn't in my hands. But that's okay, because the timing just hasn't been right yet. The story hasn't fully mellowed out, and it's not quite the story that needs to be told. Anyway, so that's a separate thing. But anyway, great job. Congratulations on getting it done and publishing it. And so let's just dive into a couple of the chapters. Chapter number 1 is Life with a Mask. I think you've already kind of covered that. I'm assuming, that's really that initial moment when you realize that, okay, things can't go on the way they've been going.
Right. One of the things is I define, in the book is, why do we wear a mask? Well, like we talked, there's shame, guilt, poor self-image, feeling unworthy, unloved, failed, or failure, that you'll be judged. And there's just all those negative thoughts is why we put a mask on, is we're hiding. And so what is, it gives us a fake facade and a shield of protection in some ways during those times, which, timing again is everything, and that's okay. But there's a time where you have to, the whole, title is Unmasked, taking that mask off so you can have the power of courage and vulnerability to live free, because all of us want to be free. I think of all of the baggage of the past, and be able to walk new every day in what our opportunities are, what the calling is on our life, the purpose of our life, and walk that out, because we're not here for a long time, and we're here for a good time. But hopefully, I always do women's retreats, Steve, on an annual basis, and workshops, and I just am always encouraging women to, and even men, it's not just for females, but to walk out the calling in your life, walk out what is your purpose, because what is it that the legacy that you want to leave behind, and hopefully make a mark. So make a difference in people's lives is what these retreats are about. So having the courage to be vulnerable is an accomplishment in itself, because once we let our light shine, we give permission, not that we need to, but some people need permission to be transparent and let their light shine.
I've always noticed that as I share certain aspects of my story, initially I was like waiting for people to respond to like what I had just said, and the way they responded would be by sharing something in their own life. And so, it is a permission thing. It does allow others, when we open up and when we are vulnerable with who we are, it gives others permission to open up. And that's what your message is. What's interesting about the women's retreats that you've been doing for 10 years is you've been on a leadership path, yourself for a long time. And so this awakening of the last, 4 or 5 years, it wasn't like you were someone who was completely, in the dark and unaware. And yet, to have such a profound, like awakening yourself, it's just very interesting that the learning just never stops and the growth keeps on going, and hopefully it gets easier, and I think that this awakening that you had, I mean, it really was kind of like a turning point where like that had been a block for all of your life. And then suddenly, that it opened up. So you want to comment on that at all?
Yeah, absolutely. There's breakthrough through getting onto the other side of that setback. And I appreciate you acknowledging, my journey, even professionally, in the sense that I've been in leadership. I've been in my business. I've hit certain milestones, which are great blessings. I have worked really hard, as all of us do, and I've stayed focused. I am grateful for that. However, like you said, that turning point was because I was single for so long. I've, needed to take care of myself like all of us do. However, I didn't have a backup plan. So I was so driven, Steve, just, keep the eye on the ball, stay focused. And it was all in a professional way, where then I realized that my personal relationships were being obviously negatively affected, because when I actually was a pharmaceutical sales rep for 5 years, and I was on the road constantly. And any relationship with a man that I had was strained because I was gone. And I just had this focus that I had to take care of business, we all feel that way, I think, at times. But finally, it was like you said, I've gone from that particular leadership role, which, not that I've given it up, but it's like I am more comfortable with where I'm at and not feeling like I'm chasing the ball all the time in my business. However, in the personal was the aha moment where I was just like, okay, how can I use this time to look at how balanced I could be, not only in my business where I was thriving, but also in my relationships. And so that is, I mean, even this, I think if you don't mind, I'll read this little thing where it says a setback is a setup for a comeback, and
So, yep.
so that is huge. And that the plan for us would boggle our mind if you could see the doors that are going to be open, the opportunities that will cross your path, and the people who will show up. You'd be so amazed, excited, and passionate. It would be so easy to set your mind for victory. And, all of us hopefully have faith in whatever it is, but we hopefully have faith. And that's what it's all about, is you've got to believe it before you see it. So I think it's all about what do you see in your path in the future, and what God's favor is surrounding you like a shield. Every setback is a setup for a comeback. Every bad break, every disappointment, every person who does you wrong is part of the plan to get you to where you are supposed to be.
Yeah, we have these teachers that show up in our lives, and the man who that you who was Mr. Wonderful, he taught you something that you really needed to learn. So it all worked out the way it was supposed to work out divinely.
Absolutely. And so you just have to look at things differently, Steve, and that is to look at every opportunity is that you have a chance to grow, you have a chance to get better, and and be okay with where you're at. Even in my book, I say it's okay not being okay. It's okay not having a great day today, or even a great week, or a great month, a great year, but hopefully we'll get over that and be able to thrive and achieve what it is that we want and what we see is our purpose.
You have a chapter titled Truth versus Ego. Ego is one of those things that we all struggle with. And truth is one of those funny things that, can be whatever we want it to be. So, what were you thinking? What's the main message in that chapter?
Well, I use the acronym EGO as, in my world, edging God out. So there's a lot of pride in ego. When you have, an ego, you're not willing to look in the mirror a lot of times because you think you've already arrived. And so I want people to know what the truth is. And the truth is that that we are loved unconditionally, that we are forgiven 100%, and that we are worthy. And there's nothing that is so bad that we can't learn from it and move forward. So the truth will set us free, is the whole bottom line to all of that, is that we will be set free. And that the ego is where people never compromise. They do not accept failures. They negatively compare themselves to others as competitors. So there's a lot of competition in that. Always looking at themselves versus the bigger picture. So I would like to think that the truth will make people recognize that it's not just all about me. And that, one of the women that I always look to is, her name's Joyce Meyer. She's a pretty big name on the Christian networks. And she's always saying, she gets on the stage, Steve, and she'll walk around saying like a robot, well, what about me? What about me? What about me? And that's what ego is. It's all about me. Whereas hopefully we're taking a bigger picture and looking at the bigger view of, it's not just about me. It's about all of us.
Yeah. And that's probably a good way to transition to chapter on love is the why. We miss the idea that love is really the foundation of everything that we do. And if we're not being loving and generous in our approach, then we're really living in that protection, fear, ego-based lifestyle.
Yes. One of the things that I turn to is where it says, love always protects, always trusts, always hopes, always perseveres, and that love never fails. And that the greatest thing we can have is not only love for ourselves, but love for each other, and holding each other up and encouraging each other. Because together, with teams, the acronym is like, together, everyone achieves more. And so when you come together and look at the greatness in someone else and lift them up, you're lifted up in that response as well. So love is the why. There is no fear in love. That's the biggie, is there's no fear in love.
You know, my sense is that you professionally were lifting others up, and in the work you were doing with the leadership, but it came down to more of a self-love and acceptance than any other thing. That was part of that lesson that needed to be learned, is that, you know, we have to put our, you know, and this is like that fine line between ego and love. We have to put ourselves first. We have to learn to love ourselves and be accepting of ourselves before we can really be of service to others.
Absolutely. You know, depending on where people come from, I always say I put my faith in God first, me second, because just to your point, Steve, if I'm not healthy and if I am not well, I can't be healthy, loving, or well for someone else, for my husband that I have now, and who's an amazing man that I was, you know, he was like right in front of me, Steve, for 3 years as my best friend through this whole process. And you talk about awakening, you talk about taking the mask off and being able to see who this person was like the you know, the skirt on a stage that was ripped from the top to the bottom. It was like, oh my gosh, this guy has been like I would introduce him, Steve, as my BFF, my best friend forever. And he was like, wait a minute, I am your best friend, but he was wanting to have a more intimate relationship. But I was, again, hiding and in the mask, but the love was there all the time. And then all of a sudden, I was able to see him, and I was in a better place. So I had learned to be okay with the fact that I'd made those mistakes, okay, that it doesn't matter, honestly, what anyone thinks about us. The most important thing is that where we're at with ourselves, meaning at peace, and not, you know, being in a ego area, but just having love and peace for ourselves, forgiveness for ourselves, unconditional love even for ourselves, that, you know, I'm going to make mistakes and it's okay. I just hopefully will learn from them. And so you're absolutely right. It's, you know, you have to have love for yourself, and then you can give that love to other people.
What a gift he gave you to be patient and to, you know, be your friend all that time. And, you know, so he really was approaching it unselfishly, you know, as a giving, sharing, caring person, human being. So this it sounds like it all worked out exactly the way it was supposed to.
Oh, absolutely. And that's the whole thing, is timing is everything. That's the other chapter. Timing is everything, because love is the why. And when it's right, you'll see it, you'll believe it, you'll know it. And the timing is perfect. Now, however, if we jump in front of that car that's about to take us out, that's not good timing, right?
Right.
So you have to pause. And I always say, when you have peace in your heart and your soul, that's the most important, because that tells you that you're on the right path. If you have angst, if you're anxious, if you're stressed, if you're angry, any of those emotions, it can be a sign that you aren't where you need to be, or doing what you need to be doing, or with who you need to be. And so that was the piece that I had. All of a sudden was like, boom. And in my prayer time, I heard that let no man separate what I've put together. And I was just like, thank you for that aha moment. It was a 2x4. And I went to him and said, okay, because he had wanted to have a relationship sooner than I was, but I wasn't ready. And like you said, he was unselfish. And then all of a sudden, Steve, it was like, okay, I can see this man differently than my BFF. I can see him as my soulmate and my mate for life. And it all happened, you know, right before the pandemic. And we got married on a mountain in Stevensville, Montana, in a pandemic. And my joke is when people say, how do you get married in a pandemic? And Steve, I have to tell people that at my age, you get married when you can, because I'm not 20. So it was a great thing. And it was on a mountain. It was very freeing. It was beautiful. And, you know, again, love is the why and timing is everything. And, you know, it's amazing what you can go through, but we all have to go through stuff, right?
That's right. And interestingly, you know, I know exactly, well, I don't know exactly where you live, but I know exactly the valley that you live in, because I lived in the valley for 10 years myself, and our paths had actually crossed, although, you know, we never I can remember, meeting you, but it was in a situation that was in a public, or, not a public, but a group setting. And so there wasn't any one-on-one interaction. And so we never really got to know each other that way. But anyway, it's just funny how, what it proves is that we're all connected. There are no coincidences. And if we just allow things to unfold the way they're supposed to unfold, they all work out perfectly. So I feel like our reconnecting, and our friend Danielle has been attending your women's seminars the last couple of years, and I didn't piece it all together until finally she said, "Hey, Katy has this book. You've got to talk about her." And then the Unmasked thing was too close to my own unmasking in a certain way, my own growth in terms of what's my own identity? What is my purpose? And you talk about that in the book. How do we find our purpose? And until we find our purpose, it's like we're always going in different directions, searching for it. So anyway, I just think it's great that we have a personal connection in addition to you're being an interesting, fun guest to have on today.
Oh, thanks, Steve. I agree. I think we're all interconnected all throughout the whole world. I mean, that's what makes us humanity. And your mask is a little bit different than mine, obviously. And even there's a different mask for everyone. And that's why even in my workshops, I say, name your mask. Well, my mask was in relationships. Some can be masks in relationship with family or even in a job. And, there's people that are stuck in jobs or professions that they absolutely just don't think that there's a way out, where there's always a way out. And so my whole purpose of writing this book was to hopefully encourage people to step into who they are, whose they are, and walk out the purpose on their life, and realize that when things aren't going exactly the way we want, that you need to pause and realize that maybe the timing isn't right. Maybe it's a way in my mind that God's protecting me from making another mistake or going someplace where I shouldn't go. So when I use my inner heart and soul of, does this feel peaceful? Does this feel right? It's a great barometer of where I'm at. But there's not a person that hasn't hidden behind a mask at some level, in some way in their lives. They just may not know it yet. And hopefully that they will come to be free to be who they are and who they were called to be, and live out their purpose in their life. So that was my prayer, is to let people be free, take the mask off. And by being vulnerable, obviously we're allowing other people to be okay with not hiding behind that mask.
One of the notes that I wrote down, and Jed checks in with a comment, and he says, the mess becomes the message. I had written that down. I love that. And what was the second part? The test.
Test becomes your testimony.
The test becomes your testimony. So the mess becomes the message, and the test becomes your testimony. Very, very nicely done there. Let's kind of get to the point where we wrap up. What would you say to someone who is feeling like they're not, that they are still hiding behind a mask? What would be the message that you'd encourage them to, how could they have more courage and live more vulnerably?
Well, what hits me right away, Steve, is that people wear a mask a lot of times because of fear. And that little acronym is false evidence appearing real. Mm-hmm. So what they need to get past is the fear and recognize that they are loved unconditionally, that they are accepted unconditionally, that there's not anyone that isn't making a mistake, that they are, in my eyes, they're royalty, they are righteous. And the humanity of it is we're going to make mistakes. The humanity is that hopefully we are going to be able to move forward with that. So the fear, they need to get to the core of what it is that they're, basically hiding from. Why are they camouflaging, and get to the root of the cause. And then you can start dealing with that root. So then it becomes, out and then they can move forward and be able to, leave that behind and recognize that the freeing is the healing from that hurt that took place, and realize that every day we hide behind a mask is one less day that we have to shine. And that's what I would encourage people to do and it's a timing thing again, like in the book, it's everyone's timing. Mine took me 3 years, Steve.
Mhm.
I'm sure there's some people it's taken them 10 years, but some people it might take them just 3 days because they're so tuned into, this isn't right. And I need to switch lanes and take off the mask and move forward.
Our guest is author Katy Huff Mortensen, and her book is Unmasked. There is a copy of it. I encourage you to, go to Amazon, buy the book, read it, learn from it, reach out to Katy on LinkedIn or Facebook. If you, feel like you want to be part of one of the, retreats that happen. I'm not sure when they happen. When do they happen?
Annually, actually, at the end of October, first part of November, I will be having more. I actually have a workshop coming up in 2 weeks in East Missoula. And if people want to reach out to me, Steve, they can go to katyhuffrn@gmail.com. So katyhuffrn@gmail.com. And when they go, or when they purchase the book, inside there, it's there's a workbook that's free that will help people to read the chapter and then go through the steps so they can reflect, look, heal, and be able to move forward. And also affirmations and a number of things to get their head straight and their heart in connection. And then they can have that workbook for free.
Hey, help me remember, Katy, are you spelling it with the Y or with the IE in this?
A Y, Katy, KatyHuff.
At gmail.com.
RN. They have to have the RN in there.
Okay. I'm going to, if it's okay with you, I'll put that in the comments. Would that be okay?
That'd be awesome.
Let me do that right now. So it's Katy Huff. RN@gmail.com. All right.
Correct. That's my email. And then if they go to katy-huff.com/free gift, that's where they'll get the workbook. So Katy, my first name, -huff.com/free gift, and they'll get a workbook for free. So then they can have the book with the workbook and hopefully be set free.
So it's katy-huff.com/workbook.
Free gift.
Oh, free gift.
Free
and then
gift.
you'll get a workbook.
Yeah.
All right. I think I got that correct. Let's throw that in there. So both of those are now in the chat, so people can reach out to you, and hopefully if someone is moved to do so, they will do it, and they will learn and benefit, and we'll all live happily ever after with our masks torn off.
That's right. Unmasked. Isn't that amazing that, 2 years ago, this started in 2018. You talk about, I always say God has a sense of humor. So 2 years ago, I'm told unmasked. 2 years later, we're all running around in a mask. It's like, how did that happen? Right? It's kind of crazy.
It is kind of crazy. And one of the funny things is I realized that, we lived in the same valley, in the Bitterroot Valley, a beautiful spot of Montana. And I went there 10 years ago, knowing that I was going to kind of set up like I thought I was setting up the rest of my life. And instantly, everything that I had planned kind of started unraveling. And so I had to scramble in order to, to survive and settle down. And so anyway, things did settle down. And then I lived kind of in a smaller way over those 10 years. And then about 2 years ago, I went, oh my gosh, it's time for me to leave. I have to go back out into the world. And a friend said to me, gosh, I feel like you're running away, because we had met and he knew my dream of Montana and it never was working. And I was deciding that that wasn't my dream anymore. And that's something you had talked about, that we have to be willing to like let go of things that, but there's a pride and there's like oh, I can't quit. I made the decision to do this. And then one day I was like, oh my gosh. So when he said to me, I feel like you're running away, it really affected me. I went home, I thought about it, reflected on it, and I realized, no, I'm not running away. I'm running towards, because this is the next phase and next step of my life. And if I hadn't done that, I wouldn't be talking to you today. And so I'm grateful. The way things all worked out perfectly and the timing was right. So
it comes down to trust, right? You just have to trust the plan and the process, and trust that this too shall pass, and you will get to where you're supposed to be. And who knows how long you'll be where you're at right now, right? Who knows how long I'll be doing what I'm doing. We're all hopefully and prayerfully, obviously, evolving, and at whatever pace that is.
One of the nice things about this growth, if we'll call it a growth, is that we don't need to have as much control over what's going to happen next. Whereas that was not my way of living. When I went to Montana, I had everything. I was figuring everything out, and and I had control over nothing.
Isn't that the truth? I mean, Steve, I'm from Butte, and I was raised, you take the bull by the horn. You take that square peg and you just make sure it fits in that round hole. Well,
right.
There's issues in doing that, obviously. And there's a lot of painful lessons in trying to do that. So you're absolutely right. When you finally just let go and trust that everything is happening for a reason. And it's amazing because that in itself is freeing. That's, again, obviously taking off the mask and saying, okay, I'm going to trust this process, and I'm going to trust that it's all good. And if I have that angst, I'm going to pause and before I start to push forward. But you're right. You're right when it comes to trying to control. And sometimes the people that have the biggest issues with control obviously have a harder time letting go. Yeah. And I was doing that and not willing to let go of this, what I thought was the perfect relationship, when in fact it had some significant flaws. And, finally, when you say enough is enough, and, you get moving forward, the definition of insanity is doing the same thing over and over and expecting different results, right?
Absolutely. Well, Katy, thank you so much for joining us today. Thank you for being courageous in sharing your story, for being vulnerable in sharing your story, because it allows others to come forward and realize that they're okay, and that they're perfect the way they were born, or the way they are today, and they're just in that evolution process. So you're leading the way by publishing this book, Unmasked, and thank you so much for joining us. We sure appreciate it.
Oh, and thank you, Steve. You are just a rock star. I want nothing but the best for American Gumption and the morning show. I know that some of our friends, being Terry, Max Coleman, and of course, Tamara Fleming and Danielle, I mean, we're all interconnected, and I'm just really grateful for the opportunity to come on your show. And I wish you nothing but the best.
Thank you so much. We will see you again, and I'll be back to the Bitterroot Valley to visit from time to time. That's the plan. My plan is to live and work from the road, and the Bitterroot is a place that I will always go at least a little bit out of my way to make sure I pass through. Absolutely. I hope to see you soon. All righty. Well, thank you, Katy, for joining us today. Have a blessed day. All righty. Well, that was Katy Huff Mortensen, and her book. Let's just throw it up there one more time. Her book is Unmasked. Whoops, there it is. There we go. Unmasked. You can get it on Amazon, and I really did enjoy reading it. And it was, whatever mask you're wearing, we all have some type of mask. It's a great way to, it's just a great experience. So, alrighty. Well, that is that's that. Let's wrap up and get out of here. Tomorrow is Wednesday. Victoria Reynolds, and we're going to have a conversation. She's written 2 books that talk about her own recognition that religion and spiritualities have different meanings and different approaches. And we will get into that conversation. And then on Thursday, Andrew Heschbacher comes back. He is my first cousin once removed, and he rode his bicycle across the country. He was a guest here on show number 38 back on September 25th when he was in the middle of Kansas, the state, and riding his bicycle. So we're just gonna come back. He'll join us and he'll wrap up what that experience of riding your bicycle across the country during a pandemic is like. All righty, that's it, everybody. Have a great rest of your day. I will see you tomorrow with Victoria Reynolds. Enjoy your Tuesday.